So for step 16, attaching the spur gear, well, you can see we're going to start working with the gearbox now. So we've got to grab the E3 piece, and then there is our spur with our differential gears on the inside. And then we have this bevel gear right here. We have a bearing, we have this shaft, and then they want you to use some tape, which basically is temporary, so it will hold it in so that the shaft doesn't keep popping out. So we'll need to do that too. So we're obviously into bag C now with step 16. So there are the parts that we need. And then, of course, we've got our gearbox and our spur gear. And then this little piece here, which is the A10 piece, which says oil on it. And, of course, we've got our grease. So I'll set this up and we'll put this together. So let's put the A10 piece into the gearbox first. And the reason being is if you think that this piece of tape is actually just temporarily holding everything together, seems like it's going to be a nuisance to then try and screw in a piece that's more permanent. So I say we do that first. So if we grab our gearbox, and you can see that the way this would sit would be like this. So you know that this piece right here is to sit right there over top. That just covers it up. So we're just going to take our BA3 screw and we'll just screw this all the way down. Now, for the most part, I think it's kind of interesting. It's like the old school setup, but you know, if you wanted to put more grease into the gearbox, you would unscrew that so you could move this a bit and it'll be an open hole. You can squeeze some more grease in there and then close it up again. So that's all that's really there for. But that's also the only thing that we're going to be screwing in at this point. So once we know that that is done, I say we start working on this. And you can see there's quite a few parts that are going to end up having to be greased up. So let's take our gearbox joint, and you can see that this all needs to be greased up. There's a little bit of fluff on there. We'll clear that off, and we'll grab our gearbox joint again. And they only really show this sort of the shaft part being covered, so I'm going to run that all the way around. There's plenty of grease on there. And we can take this, and we know that that is going to fit into here. So that's actually sitting it that way. And then there's going to be the tape. Now, I'm going to wait on the tape for the moment, because you can see that we've got our bushing. Now, the bushing itself, I'm replacing with the full ball bearing. So I can just slide that down into there, push, voila, there we go. There's our ball bearing, and that's in place. And now you can see that this gear, well, you can see that on the underside, it doesn't look like we're going to need to do any greasing there, but we're certainly going to have to grease the top. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that over top just like that, and we'll grease it while it's down there, and I can use the joint to turn it as I'm greasing. And then I'm getting plenty on there. There we go, nicely covered. And they're actually also showing that the edge part, they want a little bit of grease on there too, because that's going to end up fitting into this one right here. So you can see that the way this is going to sit, it's going to sit like that. So that would sit over top, just like that. Now, you'll notice that they showed putting the gears in right away. Well, I've waited to this stage because I'll show you why. I'm going to put in a little bit of grease in there, a little grease in there, into the four corners, or the two corners on each piece. That's good. And then we'll put that one in there, put that one in there, and put this one in there. And the reason I do that is it's a lot easier to then grease up this gear because everything's going to move around and I'm not greasing them separately. So I've got my finger on the joint, but I'm loosely holding it in so that it will spin. And that way everything's getting greased up. You can see everything's moving around. And I've probably got more than enough here, but I've just added a bit more here. I always say I like to be liberal, but not too liberal. Just trying to use enough of it that you've got it nicely well covered. And then of course this one here, they're showing you greasing that up completely, and that's going to sit right in there. So I think I'll just put that down for a second. We'll grease up this side and put a little on the end there. And stick that in there. Just wipe my hands down a second. So you can see that we've greased everything up. We've greased this up. And I mean, now that it's in, I could actually just grease this up just a touch more on either side, just because it's now in there. And I'll do the same thing on this side because we know that that's going to fit into something else and it'll need a bit of grease on there as well. There's more than enough on that shaft, honestly, because the other gear is going to go over top of it and cover it. But that is how it would look. So the only thing left to do, if you want to do it the way that they're showing, is there's your Scotch tape. I'm just going to hold this like this, stick this over top, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see that it's now held in on that one side so that it's not going to pop out. Now, I don't know if you really need to do that, but we're going to do it the way that they've suggested. So that is step 16. We've got our spur gear and our differential in there. So we can now move on to step 17 and start working on the gearbox.